Welcome everybody to Bill Naiman's Bogus Hangout. We're talking about privacy policies in the green room already. And 20 million euro fines. How much money is that in American currency?
More than 20 million.
More than I've got in my PayPal account.
Yeah, me too. Well, I was just saying just before we went live, you know, some of us, I think, Doc, you do this. I do. I host some of my clients' accounts. I mean, I do it on WP Engine, but I'm wondering suddenly, am I at greater exposure to all this stuff personally? Because I'm hosting? I don't know.
Well, you know, I was almost totally ignorant of how this is going to affect the host. So I had a conversation with Steve Garrison this morning, who used to run a hosting company, and I figured he'd have the answers, and he did. And actually, for most hosting companies, almost all, according to him, are never going to have anything other than an IP address for a site visitor, simply because they have to know where to send the data.
Yep.
Okay. And if if somebody decides they want to see or modify or delete their data, and they contact you and they want to get rid of it, you just tell them clear your cookies. That's it. Because that's all there is. But I was under the impression that the hosts might see more. For instance, there's a lot of hosts offer something like Weblizer, but that's not the hosting company. That is a third-party application that almost like a plugin. It has nothing to do with the hosting company. So, like in my instance, I use SiteGround for a lot of sites. They're not going to see anything but the IP address.
Now, if they're providing automated backup?
Well, but again, I don't keep mine on the server. So I guess if it was being kept on the server, that's a question. I'll have to run that by Steve.
WP Engine keeps a backup, either automated, definitely automated, and if you want ad hoc ones. And then I do a second one with another product that backs it up to S3. So I think I'm going to become a fishing guide and dump all this stuff.
Get out of this chicken outfit, eh?
I'll teach people Spanish. That's what I'll do. Or Terry, you could teach them Canadian.
Pardon me?
Or you could dump all this and teach people Canadian.
Yeah.
To speak Canadian.
Mm-hmm.
Be careful now. That's
funny. Sorry.
The folks in Quebec will take great umbrage at that remark.
Well,
Yeah.
That's a good point. Good point.
Of course, the majority of the folks that I know in Quebec could go fuck off too. So.
Hey, Ammon.
So, Tim, where does one go fishing around here?
Ah, good question. There's a nice fishing dock actually on the pier in Oceanside. So.
Okay, and they sell bait there. I saw that.
Well, there's, let's see, I think they do, although I haven't been fishing in a long time. There's also the big Oceanside, public pier that goes out half a mile out into the ocean, a quarter mile or something. That's a different thing. That's a pier as compared to just a dock. But
if you want fresh water, you can run down to Lake Castaic.
There'll be bait shops near there.
Say again, Tim? Terry?
There would be bait shops near there. If it's anything like it is here, if you're 2 miles within a lake around here, there's going to be a bait shop.
Oh, yeah.
Actually, one other thing, though, to answer your question, Bill, you have to have a California license. And then, if you want to, besides the license, you have to buy a special stamp for anything else. Like, does it have scales? Oh, yeah, that's an extra, stamp. But there are some private fishing lakes around where you don't have to have a license because they're private property. They're not connected to any other bodies of water. And there's
but
one
you pay
like
a fee to get in there, yeah.
Oh yeah, of course, that's their business. There's one like that on Highway 15 on the way up towards Corona after you pass through Elsinore. So if you're interested in that, that's another way to go. And it's stocked.
That's no fun though.
Well, yeah,
Fish in a barrel.
Yeah. You might you could catch as many with a rod as you could with a net.
Sometimes.
You step up to the edge of the lake, and they'll actually, a whole school of them will flock over there to you because they know that you're going to offer some food.
Well, yeah, let's put it this way. That's where I have taken my grandsons when they were little. So.
But I went up to Castaic a couple times with many years ago with a friend, and there was some pretty good bass fishing there. But we took a boat and went out into the lake, but I don't know.
The other thing you could do here, I mean, we're ignoring the whole ocean that's behind me right now. There's a lot of sport fishing boats you can take out of San Diego or out of Oceanside and have a lot of fun.
Yeah, I did that a couple times. Went out on a day trip for tuna.
No, I haven't done tuna. That would.
Oh, nice way to fill a freezer.
Mm-hmm.
Nice way to fill the boat.
They've also got them down here in Ensenada that put. You kind of you get flashbacks of Gilligan's Island, the condition of some of those boats. I tell you, it's like, will we make it out of the harbor, much less back?
2 mile tour, 2 hour tour, right?
Yeah, 2 hour tour, and 3 years later, the bones were found on a beach. I went down there one weekend. We actually decided to just cancel it and go hit in a bar instead because we were going to go down there and go fishing. And the boat, there was 3 guys with 5-gallon buckets bailing out the engine room when we got there. No, I don't think so.
Demasiado agua, demasiado agua.
Oh, man.
Oh, boy. Well,
I had a friend that went down there on a little 34-foot Hatteras several years ago. They went out to one of the islands that's off the coast down here that is actually, it belongs to the federal government and is used by the Army for training exercises. So it'd be kind of like jumping a fence at Fort Ord. When you get within 200 yards of the beach, they come running out there in a speedboat and shoot holes in your boat and lock you up and throw away the key.
I used to go diving off of San Clemente. You take day boats over there from Oceanside for that. And there's one section at the south end of the island where the bottom drops off very gradually. And that used to be a Navy gunnery range, that whole island. And at that end, they did a lot of naval aviation target practice. And you can see literally on the bottom, if you really look closely, you can see sort of these lines of 20 millimeter empty cannon shells. I mean, they're like this big, across the bottom there where somebody went flying through there and were firing and all the shells went out.
Yeah, we used to go out to San Nicolas Island, which is about 70 miles out, and get lobster. I have a picture of me holding a bug by the antenna with his eye stalks up against my hand, holding him up here as high as I could raise my fists, and his tail is on the ground.
Yeah. Well, that's pretty far out there. So,
some of these things were 25, 30 years old. They're just monsters.
Well, it wasn't as fished out that far out as it would be around here.
Well, because the San Nicolas is restricted waters. It's strictly Navy. You can't get within 12 miles of the island without having them breathing down your neck. But I was in the Navy, so we had you know what a Connex box is? It's like a container from a container ship, except it's only 8.5 feet long. Basically, it's an 8.5 foot cube, and we put a big old Thermo King freezer like off of a trailer rig up on top, and then cut one of the doors in half to make it a Dutch door, and we go out there and fill this thing with bugs.
Oh.
For a weekend. 10 guys would fill this thing up in a day and flash freeze it.
To the uninitiated, a bug is a lobster.
Yeah.
So everybody that tuned into the show thinking it was going to be about SEO.
Yeah, fishing, SEO, it's all the same thing, really, isn't it?
Pretty much.
Yep. especially with
Bait the hook,
GDPR.
set the hook.
Well, with GDPR, it's the government fishing for all those fines out there.
It's probably one of those things where you could draw an awful lot of similarities. But definitely, to do both right takes a bit of patience and a lot of preparation.
Well, you got to bait the hook, you got to set the hook, you got to gut the victim. Yeah, there's a lot of similarities.
Yeah, that's a word you Brits use a lot. Gutted. That's probably very applicable here.
Well, I was telling Bill when I first got in the green room, every time I peel another layer off the onion, I find something that is either a lot more complex than I initially thought it was going to be, or a hell of a lot simpler than I initially thought it was going to be.
Really?
And in actuality, it's the documentation is a pain in the butt. Having to write your policies and have procedures in place in case you have a breach or you have to report, or being able to handle requests from data subjects is a little bit of an administrative chore. But actually, for most of us, complying, aside from the documentation, is going to be a piece of cake for most of us.
Yeah. Yeah. And do you know what? I still stand by the thing. It's really good practice for any business to do, regardless of whether you have to by law. I really did notice the difference it was making in how I felt about sites that were doing it right.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely going to build more confidence.
The idea that you should have to have informed consent for how you use people's data and where it ends up, who you trust it to and where it ends up, is just common sense, ultimately. And it's amazing that it's taken us this long to really start thinking about it and taking responsibility.
I think it was before you joined us, Ammon. We were talking about the fact that Vermont has just enacted the first law in the United States about data brokers, the folks that are selling lists and whatnot. That within the state of Vermont, they have to be registered, they have to be licensed, they have to meet criteria that are highly similar to GDPR in terms of data protection and access and deletion and whatnot. So I'm pretty sure that's going to mean there's going to be a number of sites following suit over the next several months. And I think that at some point in time, the federal government is going to have to come in and say, okay, here's a minimum standard, because California and Delaware are not going to see things the same way. They're going to set different standards. And at some point in time, there has to be some commonality, a minimum. Which brings us to the point, why the hell doesn't that exist in the European Union? Because the supervisory authorities they're going to be regionals. And they have control over complaints made to them or data subjects that are affected in their area.
How are those created? Are they created by governmental action, or do people bid for the right to have those?
I honestly don't know. They're blessed, if you will, by the Commission, the European Commission, but I don't know if it was a bidding process or if they were asked or appointed or what. I have no idea. That's a good question.
Well, in the United States, sometimes what happens is there are legal groups that get together that publish model rules or model laws that some different jurisdictions adopt. Maybe update a little bit.
Like the UCC.
Yeah.
Well, I wonder, because there's a model you see sometimes where commercial organizations bid for the right to be the adjudicator. Here in the States, Medicare claims processing is like that, for instance. The claims review process.
Yeah.
From when medical providers submit their billings, they get judgment passed upon them about whether they should be paid or not by companies that have paid for the right to become the assessor. I just wonder.
I was curious. I'll have to ask that question, because I don't know. I have no idea how they were decided upon or empowered. I mean, I know they were empowered by the commission, but I don't know how they came about being selected. In fact, there's a lot of gray area. They've been identified at this point in time who they are, and there's basically one for each member state. But there has been discussion already that there will be some member states that will have some sub-regions, so they'll have several supervisory authorities. So, for instance, you could have, one in Paris and another one in Marseille. What are you shaking your head for, Terry?
Failure. That won't work.
Well,
Like the internet runs on standards and stuff like that. But with each, that would mean if I was running a website, I would have to, in some cases, have 3 different websites to meet these people's standards.
well,
That's possible, correct?
no, well, it's certainly, but the problem there you're faced is how do you route an individual visitor to the right site?
And yeah, here's another thing I thought of today. They're saying that I can't bar people from a website, right? For pretty near any reason. Well, I build a web. No, hold it. What I read today, someone put in the dojo, right? That where cookies are concerned, you can't bar a person from using your site because of cookies.
If they don't consent to the cookies. That was the conversation.
You can't do that. So if my site is built around a membership where we're using a cookie to track who should be seeing the content, that's not compliant. So again, we're being told by outside people how we're to build websites.
Or run our businesses.
Out of hand.
Well,
It's making a mess of things.
Terry, you've been misinformed. That's not right, Terry. That isn't happening.
That's not correct. Thank God.
No. What you cannot do, you cannot automatically screen visitors. For instance, killing an IP range. Okay.
Again, if I don't want visitors from Russia, we've been doing that since we come on the internet.
I understand.
If I don't want to sell in Russia, why should I have to take the traffic?
I understood.
That's nonsense. That's contrary to everything that is about the internet. Definitely contrary. That's like blowing up net neutrality.
Don't shoot the messenger, though, Terry.
Sorry, this stuff's starting to really bother me.
You're not the only one.
You're just making a mess of things. Governments come in and just make a mess of everything they touch.
Yeah, but Terry, we already know you've heard wrong. You're still able to have members areas. You're still able to say that you only serve people in certain areas. But what you can't do is just block the site entirely so that nobody can land on the homepage and find out why they can't access the rest.
Yeah.
So in other words, if I'm blocking Russian traffic, for instance, I just have a page that says, because we don't sell in Russia, we're not accepting calls from Russia.
Yeah, that covers you.
Of course.
The other thing is, I think it was in that same thread, Terry, that a very valid point was made. You can keep reminding them if they don't accept it. You can have a large pop-up window. You can keep asking them every page they go to, or as they scroll, have it keep popping up saying that we need to put these cookies.
Annoy them off your
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's not a reasonable workaround.
But you're only annoying people you want to get rid of anyway. So
well, sad, I guess. But that's why this stuff doesn't make any sense to me. Like
there's a lot of it. There's a lot of it that's not really reasonable. It's just like I have to be able, by the way that the regulation is written, if you visit my site and you accept cookies, and then you come back next week and you tell me, I'd like to see the data you hold on me. Well, the obvious answer is, I don't hold any data. Delete, clear your cookies.
That none of these idiots think about, right?
Well,
if I want all the information that's on a computer, I don't hack the computer. I break into the building and steal the computer.
Yeah,
That's old school.
Terry, the one thing still about
Very old school.
IP, you'd still need to think of, you might need to prove that none of your existing clients could possibly go to Russia and stay in a hotel and need to access their account.
Actually, I think I could do that, but I serve a pretty narrow niche.
Yeah,
This is why blocking entire countries and things like that, it's just bad practice, because you can't tell in this day and age where your customers are spending their holidays, where they're going to work for a little while. And if you've blocked them from a service they've paid for because they're temporarily in another country, that's not good practice.
If they have a phone, they're going to be on their phone. And I don't know about where you are, but here I can call anywhere in the world with a cell phone.
Right, but what if they're on their tablet or their phone and they're using the hotel Wi-Fi, and of course it's got a Russian IP address, and you've blocked them?
Yeah, but that's one out. What are the chances of that? I could
well, if you were
take a bullet to the head. But
if you were in the SEO industry, imagine, Terry, just imagine for a minute you were in the SEO industry, and lots of people regularly went to St. Petersburg to the headquarters for SEMrush.
Here's what I get from Russian traffic. 90% of the email spam is Russian, right? 90% of the fake leads we get are from Russians who are doing nothing but just wasting everybody's time. Like, this is just, here's the thing, Ammon, I'm sorry to but it just doesn't make sense to me when governments start telling me how to build a website and how to keep data secure, how to market properly. Don't tell me what to do. Prosecute the people who are doing it wrong, but they ignore them and expect everybody else to jump through hoops.
You punish the many for the sins of the few.
The very few. Like, it's such a small percentage.
Terry,
it's not even really worth thinking, considering.
Terry, stay indoors. You don't want to find out who runs the police force. You don't want to find out where your garbage collection comes from. You don't want to find out that they can control where you live and how much rent you pay and what taxes you pay and where that money goes. There's a lot of things governments tell you. That's kind of their job.
Well,
like this, they don't have to tell me how to live my life. They have laws. If I break them, I go to jail, right? But it just the way they're going about it makes no sense to me, because any good website is already doing most of what they're talking about.
True.
Yeah. Understand too, though, the folks on the team at the commission that worked on this realize that, they certainly realize now that it is not perfect. They realized during the process of trying to put this thing together and come to some agreement on all these different situations that it was not going to be perfect. It's going to evolve over time. They know that.
I think the big thing about that, though, Doc, is, and of course we know you're not you're the messenger. All that is fine and good until they say, oh, and by the way, the minimum fine that we have the ability now to stick to you, whether you like it or not, for even a minor technical violation is 20 million euros. And suddenly it gets to be a lot less sort of, what's the right word? I'm a lot less sanguine about saying, oh, yeah, they're good guys. They're going to kind of work on this until they get it right, and they'll flail around for a while, but it's going to be okay.
Well, that isn't the minimum. That is the absolute maximum, and monetary fines are the last resort.
It was all about getting the companies they already got, right? It was all about getting the Googles, and they're not looking for little tiny websites unless you're doing something really wrong.
In theory,
on witch hunts, they're crazy. Like, that's not right.
Oh, and Steve said the same thing this morning. This was aimed at Google and Facebook, and perhaps some other big ones like them. And I'm inclined to agree with that.
It's all indirect taxation.
So
Yes, it
is. That's what it's about. It's about squeezing dollars out of big companies that don't pay tax there.
I don't think that is the primary goal. I think the goal is to protect citizens' data, and they need to have some teeth to get some people to.
I don't give governments that much credit. They always have an agenda. No, they don't do nothing for us.
Well, certainly down here in my area of the world, I would agree with that.
Doc, let me ask for one bit of a clarification. A lot of the reading that I had done before this said pretty clearly that the minimum fine would be 4% of the annual turnover, they call it, or it would be the greater of, rather, 4% of the annual turnover, or 20 million euros. Was that wrong?
It's the maximum, not the minimum. Up to 4% of your annual turnover, or 20 million euros, whichever is greater. Up to. And they will not. No, that's not the minimum by any means. That
okay.
They're just a little bit better than the mob. They're only taking 4%.
Well,
the VIG.
Yeah.
What's the VIG, eh?
Is that per occurrence, or
that's about it?
That is for the worst, most egregious offenses, and that's going to be for somebody that is, malevolently, deliberately going out and selling people's information. Telling them we're not collecting anything, or telling them that it's protecting, but they're not protecting it, and they're selling it, and they're writing it on the bathroom wall. Then they're going to go after them and really hammer them. They could, but the criteria that sets a window for a fine amount, let's say between 2 and 4 million euro, another one from 4 to 6 million euro, another one from 6 to 12 million euro. There are criteria of the sorts of offenses that would allow for a fine within that window.
So let's say
I can't tell you what they are, but there are various levels for the fines. But the fines are supposed to be the last resort. They're going to try make you aware of the fact that you deem to be deficient in this area. It's a warning. And then if you don't heed that, then they're going to give you a written admonishment saying, okay, if you don't fix this, then you could be liable for escalated enforcement, okay? And finally they'll get around to saying, okay, we're fining you, 2 million euros or 4 million euros or whatever.
So is that per occurrence or per type of violation? For instance, if I didn't have a privacy policy on my site, is that 4% fine I pay once? Do you know?
Well, they make it up as they go, Tim.
I know.
I don't know that I've seen anything say how they would handle that. The only mention I recall of any kind of fixing in that regard was they could fine you or punish you, if you will, penalize you in some fashion that had to do with the number of data subjects that were affected.
That's what I was wondering about.
And to what degree they were affected, the seriousness of that effect. So if you had 4 users affected, it would not impact you as the controller as much as if you had 400 affected. And it's by the same token, if their IP addresses were inadvertently exposed versus their social security number or credit card number, obviously it'd be more serious. But I only scanned very quickly just a very small portion of that because it was boring as hell.
Why your Facebook and Google? Why were they? What they do wrong?
Their problem was on the right to be forgotten. They were not paying in the European Commission's eyes. They were not paying enough attention to requests to have information deleted from the index. I'm a convicted child molester, and if you put my name in, it shows up on page 1 of the SERPs. So I send you a letter, a right to be forgotten, and Google tells you to go screw off. No, it's on the internet. We're going to show it because for your name, it is relevant, and that's how our algorithms decide what to show in the SERPs. And the commission said, no, can't do that. That's when they passed that right to be forgotten law.
So it was because Google wasn't removing people fast enough?
That was that big penalty that they had last year. I think it was 2016, if I remember correctly. But
yeah, but I mean, what were they charged under GDPR?
Well, I don't think it was under GDPR. It was under the what is it, PECA, or I forget the acronym, the initialism, so Dave doesn't call me up and chew me out. But it was the existing law. It's like GDPR is going to replace and expand upon the I think it's the DCA, isn't it, Ammon? I think the 9546.
Yeah, I can't remember the name of the old one, but yes, it's the update to a bunch of different laws that covered privacy piecemeal.
Right. And there's what has confused things a lot too is with all the discussions that we're seeing online. You've got the UK has already established some of their own organizations to deal with privacy and data protection, and of course the European Commission has. And people seem to be talking about the ICO and all these different entities as though they're dealing with the same thing with GDPR, and they're not. There are standards in place already that have been in place for quite some time affecting the UK that are in a great regard similar to the GDPR. And the UK is already taking steps to make sure they have something highly similar to the GDPR when Brexit hits. But they're different. They're different entities, and there's inevitably going to be some conflict. Which one will be the most enforced? Which one will prevail if they see an incident in different lights?
Well, they want lots of them so they can use. They have many tools to play with. Well,
the other thing is there's a treaty in place now. I shouldn't say a treaty. It's an agreement in place between the United States and the EU since 2003, which was put in place for criminal processes like terrorism and money laundering and that sort of thing. But I read it, and it will allow, because the GDPR is an enforceable regulation, it would allow them to prosecute in Detroit, okay, for a GDPR non-compliance issue.
Yeah. We kind of been talking about GDPR for far too many weeks now, I think.
I'm ready to move.
Last 3 Hangouts in a row, it's dominated, and I think if we haven't covered it by now, we're kind of, it's too late. It's already law, Yep. One thing that stood out to me this week was, in recent weeks, there's been a lot of talk about click-through rates again, and looking at how, search positions affect click-through rates. One of the better studies I saw was Advanced Web Ranking. They did a pretty decent job of breaking it down, looking at different things that affected click-through rate. So, for instance, how much of a percentage drop there is on the #1 organic position if there are ads, and how that changes if there's more than one ad, and the difference between that and how it changes when the ads are above it and when the ads to the right. Oddly enough, when ads are to the right, the click-through rate for the #1 organic position went up slightly instead of down. But of course, when it's above, it went down.
Not above. Yeah.
But you'd think if it was just, it's not in the way, so they're not seeing it, it wouldn't change anything. So just the presence of more choices made it seem a little more likely somebody would just start at the top.
Maybe the ones to the right are more obviously advertisements.
Possibly. But also, I just think that the nature of search terms where the ads are on the right is very different to the ones where there are no ads or where there are ads at the top. And I think partly it is going to be in the queries, and therefore the fact they released a zip archive with all of the raw data is particularly good, because you're able to delve into that and start looking at why some of these things might be. But it's one of the very few to actually think about looking at, well, how about if it contains brand and product terms? If the search query is for those, does it increase the chances that, you know, the company itself will rank #1 and therefore be more likely to get a click? Yes, it does. What a surprise. But it's one of the very few to look at that. So often when people talk about click-through rates, they talk about them in this homogenized way that is absolutely useless.
Yeah, I'm actually looking at a PPC campaign, and I haven't done one in a long time because it didn't seem to work with what I was doing, but I was doing it on the content network. I'm so convinced that people can't tell that those ads are ads that I'm convinced I'll get more clicks just because people don't really realize the first link is an ad, second link is an ad, third link is an ad, and sometimes the fourth link is an ad. They click
I think
that it's an ad doesn't matter.
That's certainly somewhat true, and in studies they've found that that's 1/3 of people. But then again, bear in mind that another third of those people are either in the SEO industry, in industries that buy AdWords, or, you know, so it kind of gets balanced out. We're not that unique snowflake in our experience anymore.
Here's the thing, though.
We started.
Yeah. My thinking, though, is, Ammon, right? I've always gone upon the premise that your active user has the attention span of a gnat. So, you know, they don't realize they're clicking an ad when they click the first one. They're clicking the first link and going all the way down till they find what they want. I don't think the fact that it's an ad, they skip it. Is that wrong, or is that not a only 1/3?
Yeah, it's going to depend on several factors. You know, who are your audience? Are they more or less tech savvy than average? Because if they're more tech savvy than average, there's a higher chance that they know there's ads. Those ads may get almost no clicks.
Right. So, but if you were doing consumer products where, you know, it was just a regular Joe, I don't think they're really paying enough attention to know that it's an ad. Or, hey, they don't care if it's an ad. If it looks like what they want, they're going to go for it.
Even there, you've got to feature in, you know, what kind of experience people have got. You know, if somebody's buying a new PC, they're a little bit more technically savvy than somebody who's...
Ammon's having a long pause. Oh, okay. I guess I should read this report.
I guess we lost him.
Ammon?
I think he went off the air.
Yeah, I think we lost him.
Okay, so how would you feel about a patent from Google that says if there is a brand recognized in the top organic results, and they notice an advertisement for the same brand in the top organic results, they may ask the people who've published that advertisement if they want an organic result that is ranked higher as something that merges the two, the ad and the organic result. Sort of like a pay for placement.
Doesn't sound unreasonable. I was afraid you were going to say that they might decide not to show one or the other, not to show the organic because there was an ad, but to merge them, that seems reasonable to me.
They sort of did something like that with organic results and local results.
Yeah.
Where if they had a high-ranking organic result and a high-ranking local result, they ended up merging the two, and they ranked the local result higher, got rid of the organic result. And I think that lasted for about a week.
Yeah.
Too many people complained otherwise. So merging an organic result and an advertisement, you think if they did that, that might stay around?
I wouldn't bet on anything staying around with Google.
Yeah,
Often when people are searching, do you know what? They know about that shop that's 2 doors down the road. There's a reason they've gone on the internet instead. They don't want the local one. And I think a lot of times, again, people mistake what different people's intent is in different kinds of searches. I would certainly say if you sell large, bulky products, most people are not going to be wanting local results until it comes to needing to get it delivered. But if I was looking up furniture online, do you know what? Looking around a local showroom is easier. It lets me actually see the furniture. So I think there's a good chance I'd have done that and have gone to the internet because I want a wider choice than the local.
Right.
So
Also,
again,
if you buy
understanding your
local, it
market,
costs less
understanding
to ship.
search intents, understanding how people do certain searches in certain markets is so critical.
Chances are with the advertisement and your top ranking organic result, they both lead to the same website. So you're not necessarily seeing different results like you might with an organic result and a local result.
Yeah, sometimes, yeah. Certainly that's been encouraged a lot of the time. Personally, most of the time when a company once a company gets a pretty stable organic ranking, we would turn off the paid ads. Why keep paying for the same click you're going to get anyway?
I move it down the scale so it's lower on the page.
Yeah.
Just getting seen lower on the page.
Yeah. That way you've got the double mention, but it's not. You're not encouraging them to click the paid one before the organic one, because one of the things that is likely is if somebody's doing a search where you are the site they're looking for, it's effectively a navigational search. Even if it's repeating a informational query they did earlier to get the same result, they're going to click on the first listing they see that's got your brand name in it because that's what they want to get to. And if that's the paid ad, you're paying for the click that only you would have got anyway.
So this is still on the patent level. It hasn't been actually offered to people yet.
Yeah.
But if you've got a high-ranking organic result and an ad, and the presence of the ad, if you allow them to be merged, could mean the organic result ranks higher. Is it worth making that trade? Stop showing the ad and have the organic result ranking higher.
Yeah. But again, they if there was anything influencing the position of that organic thing, if there was any element of sponsorship to that, then by law, Google's then got to mark it as sponsored as if it was an ad. So it would look like the organic listing had disappeared. It wouldn't look like the ad had disappeared.
Right, and that wasn't written into the patent.
As soon as anyone gives $1 to Google, it's an ad.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the patent, of course, is looking at the technology, not necessarily looking at the legalities. They probably haven't run every patent past the legal team instantly.
We did have a time when Yahoo was showing paid for placement ads.
Yeah.
And I believe Baidu is doing that now too. I'm not sure we have any statement from the FTC about that.
Baidu?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think they're American.
No, but Americans can look at them.
Yeah, but I still don't think the the company that is kind of the official child of the Chinese government is going to be that worried about personal rights.
Right on, Em.
I could be mistaken. Maybe there's been a massive overhaul in China's attitudes. But this was the country that Google had to do its very first major hack job of its service to even be allowed to be shown to users in China. They had to give them a whole different index, if you remember, that stripped out anything politically sensitive in any way, shape, or form.
Yahoo was showing paid replacement results too. I'm not sure if they ever ended up labeling those as advertisements.
No. But that was before that law came into place, when Google wasn't very good at labeling its ads either. So again, it's a different time. You used to pay for Yahoo to spider your site. You could get priority crawling, if you remember. Was different to paid sponsorship. You ranked organically, but you could get anything indexed much faster, recrawled more regularly. That was a paid service.
Yeah, that's how they were getting around it. They said basically, this is paid inclusion, not an ad.
But the important word to notice there is desperation. I think that covers most of Yahoo's monetizations over the years.
Desperation.
That was the heading of their marketing plan.
Yahoo tried a lot of things, and most of them didn't work. And what we most remember them for is a lot of things they tried and didn't work were other people's companies.
Yep.
They killed more other people's businesses than anybody else. Going back to web rings and e-groups. It used to be the kiss of death. Anything successful enough that Yahoo bought was finished.
Yahoo would buy a company and then release a very similar product.
Yep.
Like Flickr and Yahoo Photos.
Yep.
It made no sense for them to have Yahoo Photos.
It just seemed like a classic case of not knowing what the other was doing, wasn't it? They did have more than one.
Was it Brad Garlickhouse who published the Peanut Butter Manifesto? Complained about that? Yeah. It's worth digging up a copy of the Peanut Butter Manifesto because it does pinpoint those really well.
Yep. Yeah, it's a good read.
Google does that to some extent themselves too. Their image is based on they bought another company because they couldn't get it to work themselves.
Yeah. I mean, Google do it a lot. I think there was one AI company they didn't buy, wasn't there? And for a while, everything to do with AI and robotics. If Google could, pay a ridiculous amount of money and take it on to get the brain power, they pretty much did. But that was it. It was a big recruitment program, really. They wanted some of the brightest minds in the field, and the easiest way to do that was to free them up from other commitments. And the easiest way to do that was to become the person they were already committed to.
Yeah, when they bought the image software, they were buying the engineers who designed it and ran it, not the application itself. It went, I think, out of business almost immediately.
Yeah, absolutely. Which, it's pretty smart. Sometimes it can be detrimental in the longer run. Sometimes lots of small companies branch out in lots of different directions and come up with new products a lot faster than when one company takes a thing over and everything runs in the same sort of thought process overall and has more reporting to do, and it kind of slows down progress or steers progress towards particularly tricky problems, and therefore things slow down a lot, which is why a hell of a lot of advances have come out of companies that Google didn't buy. Considering the huge amount of the huge percentage of the population of the world's top AI engineers Google took on, you would have expected them to have a commensurate amount of the patents and new products coming out, and they haven't got anywhere close to it.
I think a lot of that is psychological, though. You
Yeah.
know, when you feel like you've pretty much got a stranglehold on the knowledge base in a particular field, then those folks are going to focus on what they're trying to do and then just get it done. Whereas if you feel like you'll be doing really good this year, if you get a 2% market share, you're going to be trying to hustle. You're going to be trying to innovate. And I think a lot of that may be partly what their problem is with AI. Is
that's why they started venture capital companies, all kinds of stuff. That was about finding the best technology, I'm pretty sure of it.
Well, that, and also being able to effectively strangle some competition probably came into play too, because if you're funding somebody, you can help them or you can slow them down.
I suppose.
That
Google is Microsoft.
Yeah. I'm sometimes surprised that Google don't work on some of the really simple, small problems that I think, they could fix and do good very, very quickly and easily. For instance, what about an app that helped rescue services more easily split their labor to do an effective search pattern? So they would all, log into their Android device and it would let them know with a, on-screen display of exactly where they needed to cover. Strikes me as something they've got all of the technological pieces for, could do in minutes using technology that's already built into maps, and would be useful worldwide for the good of all.
And they did have apps that could be updated to work like that. They had one called Dodgeball.
Yeah.
Could work that way. People in different social groups in a specific area used to be able to look at different parts of a map and connect with different people, search for different things within it.
Yeah. But it does strike me that it would enable, let's say, police agencies. You could have an app that tracked exactly where had been looked and how quickly, and could plot the chances of this sector is absolutely clear. It's been checked. We're 95% certain that what you're looking for isn't here. So if you were trying to track a stolen car, it would very quickly start blocking off the map as to where was covered and how fast a car could possibly travel to know, okay, well, it's definitely not here. Here's where you need to be looking.
That technology has existed for decades. When I was a cop back in the 80s, we had transponders in every car, so you could see where each patrol unit was, and it would overlay on a huge screen at dispatch, and you could tell them, okay, take a second left onto A Avenue. They could do the same thing. They could tie into LoJack when they were looking for a stolen vehicle.
Yep.
That technology has been existent for years. It would not be a difficult thing at all to do an overlay of 20 units onto a map like that for a search pattern, for instance.
Yep,
Like
exactly.
you say, it would take some developer minutes probably to interface them all.
And once you're able to code it for multiple units, i.e., take updates from multiple things, this one has covered this and in this time space, it's then only recursive to scale that up as high as you need it to go so that you could actually do a worldwide search pattern.
Mm-hmm. Also, the recent fires in California, they use similar technology there to keep track of all of their units out in the field fighting the fires.
Yeah.
And they had satellite imagery telling them real time where the fire had advanced to, so they knew whether or not this fire road number 125 was still passable or not, and they could project the speed of the fire, how fast it was advancing, and how long that would remain open before they would tell somebody to use 125 as an exit route.
Yeah.
Again, Google certainly has the ability. I don't know that they have the feeling that they have the responsibility for it. I mean, they show a lot of social responsibility in some regard, but maybe there's just so many damn potential projects out there that they just have decided arbitrarily we're gonna work on no more than 4 or 5 or 10 or whatever of these at only one time.
Yeah. I mean, and to that extent, absolutely, I can understand that. What I can't then understand is why Duo becomes a priority.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a lot of products that Google comes out with where you think,
really?
Why? And yeah, I would like to see more. I do think sometimes it's a waste of talent and a lack of imagination. Some of the products that are coming out, and that's as high as 50%.
I suspect that they have grown so much, so rapidly, that just the bureaucratic web has become almost unmanageable. I have thought many times that as quickly and as hugely as they have grown, they've done a pretty damn impressive job of being able to function at all.
Yes, certainly, that there's a change in that. And again, it's one of the things I think they borrowed heavily from academia. Universities around the world have been collaborating on big projects for years. The internet itself is one of those collaborations. Mm-hmm. And I think they borrowed heavily from that. And there is a reason that, various Google buildings are often called campuses.
Well, we're getting close to top of the hour. I think it might be time to have everybody go around and tell us what they're up to for the next week, or leave us with a thought for the week. Doc?
All right, I was muted. I am still working with Steve. We're trying to launch a new project. We're still working on that site. And in my other 23 hours a day, I'm working on GDPR. Cue Terry to shake his head. There he goes. Okay. I can always make. It's like I have mind meld capabilities with Terry. I can make him start shaking his head just by mentioning those initials. But that's going to keep me busy for a bit. I'm really looking forward to getting this new project launched.
Jerry?
This week, well, more of the same. Doing at least one more hangout this week on Friday with the dojo, and I've almost got one of the sites ready to go, And I've been going like this as I look at the price of retro games, which I have a bag full. They're actually about 100 times more than what they were worth brand new.
Yeah, it's a big market.
Yeah, I'm actually thinking about trying to make a business out of it with forums and stuff like that. Saw a forum on that subject with over 1 million posts.
Yeah, it's one of those industries that is very niche, but it's a profitable niche. It's one of those things that people ignore. It's a bit like 20 years ago, everyone thought, oh, well, that's it. Vinyl's over. Records, close down all the record shops. Nobody's going to be interested in records anymore. And, you know, a few companies kept going, mostly for the collectors and the DJs. And, yeah, it's those businesses are still doing pretty well, thank you.
It's also, Ammon, a bit like my brother. When I came back home for the first time, he was just getting into it. That was in the 80s. And a lot of those people are going back to it because they're tired of the gaming now. They'd rather play something slow and less stressful.
And what's interesting is some of the games that have stayed active. Games that were once, you know, huge things. Let me think of a AAA sort of title. Well, Command and Conquer. You know, Command and Conquer as a game today, pretty much dead and gone. But some of the older versions of that have still got such strong modding communities that have built their own games on the top, that those are doing really, really well still.
Yeah, I'm also being kind of going with the idea of putting it online, which was kind of interesting. My brother knows gamers from way back, and he knows a person who wrote an emulator for Atari to run on a PC. After that, he worked at Microsoft. Before that, excuse me.
There's definitely so much content that you can create, because the gaming community is so big that it tends to be very, very fractured. And there's very few places that specialize in retro gaming unless it's just one platform. And pulling some of that together, being a one-stop shop for, you know, emulators that let you play some of those old games, and also, the hardware to do it for real and have the full experience. Awesome stuff. And the ability to sell side stuff to go with it. You know, if somebody wants to get their original PlayStation 1 back in working order because they had a great time on it, better still if they go back to the old Atari, giving them some of the little accoutrements as well to go with that could be really fun.
Yeah, that's what we have, or some a lot of pieces to extend it, like add peripherals, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Kind of cool. My brother has been at it for a very long time. In fact, the first online project I did was on a BBS store with him and building a community here in Toronto.
Yeah. Don't forget the little peripherals, like, you know, drinks coasters that look like AOL discs.
Yeah.
So that you can remember how it was when you played this game the first time around.
Yeah. I like the basketball. The ball is, it looks like it's square. Anyhow.
I'm following up on a couple of little bits and pieces I've been doing, but generally, you know, just being me, Doing my own little thing, spitting feathers at some of the nonsense I see posted at times. How about you, Bill?
Not too much. I'm still working on putting together presentations. I'm going to speak at SMX Advanced in a couple of weeks, and looking forward to seeing Seattle. They keep on sending instructions on preparing the slides that conflict with each other.
Maybe they should start doing an SMX retro, where you give advice from 15 years ago, like a lot of the people around the internet do.
Yeah, retro.
You know, Terry could do a tie-in and provide the games to go with it.
That could be fun. Yeah. Well,
Don't everybody talk at once.
Usually
no.
at the bottom.
What's that?
I said that's a deep subject with water at the bottom.
No, I was just thinking it's time to close down and start the next week. Get ready for next week.
There you go.
Thank you, everybody. Take care.
Bye all.
All right.